So I know I'm a little behind on Arcane. I'm going to do the second block of 3 episodes. I know the last block is out. I had intended to have these watched and a review shot last week. That didn't happen because a lot of other stuff was happening, so I didn't get to it. I debated potentially like just watching the last 6 episodes all together and reviewing that as a chunk, but I'd still rather review it in the way that it was released and that I had intended to review it. So you get a block of 3 right now, and the last block of 3, I'm not going to promise later this week because life, Thanksgiving, like stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, but I am going to try to get it out this week. But regardless, the middle 3 episodes of Arcane. This is going to be difficult for me to talk about for a specific reason, which is that while still being a very good show, I'm finding a lot of nitpicks, not in a vacuum. Like, if this show had not had the first season that it had, I probably wouldn't be bringing up most of what I'm going to say. But the thing is, I can't talk about this show without comparing it to the first season, and the first season, so far, was better. It just was. It was better constructed. It flowed better. It even managed time jumps better. This has had, a few leaps forward in time, and I'm not going to say they've been badly handled. There've been montages, little music video things sometimes, and they've worked, but they haven't worked as effectively as the time jumps did before. And I kind of hit on part of my issue in the previous video, which is that it feels like the events are being less driven by just the characters being themselves. Everybody is now starting to react to either outside forces or things that are just like there's no way for them not to respond to, but it wasn't really fully initiated by another character. The degree to which Hex Tech is expanding, the degree to which Noxus is coming, and yes, you could tell me Ambessa is a character and her decisions are affecting others. Well, yes, but she already kind of felt like an outsider and an interloper into the situation when she showed up last season. So maybe this is a me thing, but I was more interested in the built-in, baked-in, homegrown tension of the characters there. I appreciated her as a complicating factor, but how much she's currently driving the narrative, I don't love. I think my general issue, I think probably best boils down to there are decisions being made that feel like they are made to accomplish specific character ends, whereas in the first season, it felt like the questions were asked in the form of, what would these characters do? Well, they do this. Okay, let's cascade that down. And then that's why it felt so driven by character actions and character decisions, whereas here it feels more like, what's an event that we can have happen, and then what will these characters do? That's not an invalid way of writing, but compared to how well the first season did all of this, I find it a less compelling. And I think this is best exemplified by Vander. So, firstly, credit where credit's due. At the end of episode 4, when I realized who that thing was, damn, goddamn, wow. That was that's a big moment. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But here's what I mean when I say it feels like events are being dropped on the characters to force them in certain directions. The split between Vi and Jinx felt not only natural, but inevitable and tragic in the previous season. Now, I'm not saying that as and you can't undo that way. No, you absolutely can. And they actually had a way to undo it. It's just it would have taken longer. Because the way that they could have undone it was, I was just looking at these characters and going, okay, despite the previous season of Jinx falling apart and Vi more or less keeping it together, we're now watching the flip where Jinx is starting to pull it together as she takes care of this kid. And Vi is completely coming apart at the seams. And it was especially interesting with Jinx to realize what a negative influence Silco was on her life. And he did his best. He did care about her, but he was still a massively negative influence on her existence. And she was very toxically dependent on him and on his approval and on what he wanted. So to see her start to find her own footing in his absence and to do it through this kid, yeah, that works. And you could have, if you were willing to take longer, you could have stretched out Vi's fall with Jinx's starting to pull it together and have them cross paths and then start to see the changes in each other and react that way. And there are tiny bits of that, but for the most part, what brings them back together is we drop a literal monster built out of their father figure or actual father. I haven't rewatched the first season lately. I don't remember Vander being referred to as their father. I'm not saying that as like I don't buy that he's their father, but like it's weird that the term father and him saying like stay away from my daughter got such heavy emphasis when I only ever remember the characters all referring to each other by first name previous season. I'm not saying he's not their dad, or he certainly was effectively, regardless of biology, but I don't know. It felt weirdly forced, but even beyond that, just the fact that oh, what brings them together? A desire to help their shared parent figure. That feels a little contrived for the sake of getting them there faster. Getting them on the same page faster, having it no longer be about Vi hunting down Jinx. And I'm not saying like that story should have been the whole season. I think it makes sense to pivot it at a certain point. But this is a hard pivot, forced by the introduction of this plot element. And then, once they are working on the same side actively, then we can kill the monster. Then we can kill Vander because he served his plot function. And that really was kind of what solidified my overall sense of like, this feels like they knew where they wanted these characters to end up, and they came up with scenarios that would force them to be in those places, in those positions. Because the fact that you reintroduce a character who died before and then kill them again 2 episodes later, that to me reeks of forcing the plot. Of this exists to force the plot in a direction, and then we get rid of it as soon as we've done that because the presence of this thing, of this man, of what this creature, whatever you want to consider it, his presence complicates things. Now that he's accomplished what we need him to do, we need to get rid of him. Now, I could be wrong about that. It is potential that this will create a different rift and or struggle, especially for Jinx, given, what she just lost in that explosion. And I can potentially appreciate that as long as they're able to do something that isn't just, her breakdown in season 1 again. And again, there's a lot here that's good. What's happening with Mbessa's daughter, whose name I suddenly can't remember. I'm crap with names if you don't watch me regularly. I just am. Visually, certainly, the Black Rose stuff is fascinating, and I am curious, but it also feels a little bit like a distraction. The stuff with Victor, again, it feels like it's speed running that plot. Oh, and why does the mad scientist have a Mr. Freeze-style preserved wife? What was the point of that? I completely bought, just in the characterization we'd had of him up to this point, I completely bought he just did this because he had a compulsion, or this is just what he believed his life's work was. So like, I do it for love, and here's my preserved love interest. Like, really? Why? What? Why? I think it's frustrating mostly because the first season didn't need these kind of tricks. Didn't need these kind of crowbars of trying to get you to think a certain way about a certain character or to force the characters in certain situations. When something forced the characters in a direction, it was the decisions of another character. It didn't feel like the machinations of the plot and the writers. Here it does. And I just want to be clear. I don't think this is bad. I think it's still gorgeous. The flashback in the different art style when we saw young Powder and Vi, especially, that was lovely. I really enjoyed that. Just getting a couple of quick flashes of Silco and just hearing his voice again, I've just enjoyed as a thing. Like, there's a lot that is good about this. The conflict between Jace and Victor, that doesn't necessarily feel rushed, but I feel like because of all the other stuff going on, I'm not seeing that develop as much as I would like. Because it feels like Jace kind of jumped real quick. And again, not necessarily in terms of the length of episodes it took him to get to the point where he did what he did, but more in the, okay, there's the time available in the episodes overall to cover this more, but you're spending it on other things, so it feels like we're skipping steps. And it's still gorgeous. It's still well acted. The music is fantastic, but it just isn't what I fell in love with in season 1. In a lot of ways, it's making me think of Castlevania Nocturne, which is another show that I would have loved were it not for the existence of the first 4 seasons of Castlevania, which are exactly what Nocturne is, but better. Nocturne, on its own, is very good. But the instant you compare it to the original run of Castlevania, every aspect is a little worse. Not bad, but like, this was done better before. And it's the same here. Just about every aspect, short of the visuals, I'd say those are equal, but just about every aspect of the story writing, at the very least, is slightly worse. Not massively worse, but slightly worse. And if I didn't have the first season to compare it to, I wouldn't think that. Well, we'll see what this last block of episodes does. There's still a lot that they've got to try and wrap up in 3 episodes. I don't know how they're going to pull this off. For the first time, I'm nervous. I haven't been nervous about this season up to now, and now I am. It's a weird feeling, and I don't like it. Arcane, episodes 4 through 6. What did you think of these? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Tell me how wrong I am. I expect a lot of people will. This happens whenever I'm like, it's good, but with a really beloved thing. People tend to get upset at me. You can disagree with me. Just be polite. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, and subscribe. They all help out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabi Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Ingrid Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. They're all calmer this time because they're eating papaya. Whatever works.